Hey, I'm Gwen,
I'm Sue.
and today we are going to be talking about Portal.
Or more specifically, we're going to be talking about Glados as a representation of Portal as a whole.
So, Glados is a very advanced character in the game Portal, and
Well, she's really advanced in that she is both a robot but also a bodiless intelligence that goes throughout the game. And even though she doesn't necessarily do anything, you can't play as her, the entire game does revolve around her.
so at the end of the game, you see the four different cores of Glados. There is the morality core, the curiosity core, the intelligence slash cake mix core, and the anger core, and each piece has its own influence on her overall character.
You could argue that the cores represent different traits of a personality if she were a person, so to speak. So you would have the morality core as the conscience. Now, it is noted at kind of the climactic battle scene that the morality core wasn't initially part of Glados. It was installed after she killed a bunch of people, um, filling a chamber of children, arguably, with neurogas. So the morality core is an interesting and really intriguing portion of Portal as kind of a whole, even though it doesn't come up till later, but you can see quite frequently once you know that it's there and in retrospect that the morality core is something that's hindering Gladys, but also something she's very aware of. It's an interesting dichotomy. She understands who she or how she's programmed versus how she's been restrained, and there's a lot of conflict between the two.
So after destroying the morality core, you then get the chance to destroy the curiosity core. When you pick up the curiosity core, it's very childlike. It has a childlike voice, a childlike curiosity. It's asking questions like, "Oh, what's over there? What's over there?" And this is a very human feature. Like curiosity is in everyone, and everyone is asking questions. And then this core relates to the next core you destroy, which is the intelligence core. And the intelligence core is taking the questions you asked as a curiosity core and applying it. So it talks a lot about the cake mix and making a recipe. And so it's like they work sort of hand in hand, asking questions, getting answers, using your answers, whether or not they are right or wrong.
This is true. And then the curiosity core kind of also relates back to the anger core, which is the final kind of core that you deal with. It's interesting because while the other cores have a very specific voice that they have, the morality core is kind of the general Gladys kind of voice you get throughout the whole thing, but curiosity core has a very childlike voice. The cake mix is very slow, monotonous. It doesn't have a ton of emotion when it's talking about anything. The anger core doesn't necessarily have a voice so much as it's an animalistic rendition of noise. It's growling and snarling and snapping, so to speak. And it's quite interesting to note a bestial kind of trait within a robot. It's, I suppose it's a bit of a conflicting idea of you having something so advanced, polished, but also having to revert back to something very instinctual. Also, with the curiosity, to be curious is to have a sort of self-awareness, arguably, and anger more so, because anger isn't necessarily quite an emotion, but as a reaction. It's a display of an emotion or a processing or kind of down that path. So for Gladys to have an anger core notes that she also has emotions that she doesn't necessarily know how to deal with because she's now expressing them through violence and anger.
So the four cores of Gladys also relate to technology, like in real life. So, like the morality core is very much technology that helps people. So, X-ray machines, GPSs, it's stuff that aids us in our daily life. Like phones could be seen as that. They help you get places with the maps. They help you find things. You research. Again, the X-ray machines, equipment you'd find in hospitals, all there to like help you. The curiosity one, which is next, would be technology that is developmental. It's the science sort of side of technology. So throughout the game, Gladys is talking about you as an experiment and seeing how you react to different sides of things. So there's technology that codes and stuff and looks at how different things work together and reactions and stuff.
Yeah. And then you have the intelligence core or the cake mix core. And it's a little bit it's a little different than the other cores in that it doesn't really do much except tell you the worst possible cake recipe in the history of cake recipes, and I'm going to argue that till I die. But it's the idea of knowledge versus understanding, and that's a really big part of technology, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. Making a screaming robot, congrats, you made a robot, but why did you do it? So in the instance with the intelligence core of how it would relate to ulterior and technologies that are in the world today, I would say it's having the knowledge versus understanding. It's knowing the tomato is a fruit, but understanding you don't put it in a fruit salad. And so kind of the difference between current robotics and AI, understanding and knowing, and the interplay that's going on with that currently as we move into automation on a mass scale. Yeah. Then we also have the anger core. And we have discussed, we believe it's a very good representation of the weaponization of technology. And so lasers and all that fun stuff, but
The dark web.
exactly that. It's taking what might be benign technology and weaponizing it. So you have the dark web, or using something such as a GPS for tracking someone on when you use drones. So it's kind of the idea of X-rays are technically lasers, but if you mess with them a little too much, you have an actual laser. So weaponization, again, of benign or what should be impartial technologies.
Yeah. And are going to move into sort of what we felt the game was telling us. What it was about, what
if
the
it had a
underlying
message,
features
what's
were.
the message? We found one, maybe. Yes.
Possibly. This is our thoughts anyways. So like the main one that I found was that there is a underlying fear of technology advancing too far. When I was playing the game, my mind kept racing back to a book I had to read last year called RUR by Karl Kopek, and it's like
It's a script.
it's a script of how these robots were very helpful, but they advanced too far and they were made to they were like they became almost human in their thinking and was like, why are the humans treating us lower than them? And so they revolted, and that's what I felt is sort of how this game came to be, is the robots' intelligence advanced too far, and that's how we got to where we are in the game.
For sure. And throughout the game, there is notably no necessary very clear signs of fear, so to speak, but there is definitely a feeling of distrust. And that's very advanced by Glados speaking. You have this, bodiless voice coming through as you're playing a character trying to get out of this rat maze. But it's really interesting to note that as the game goes on, it naturally progresses from the puzzle game to a survival-based game, and that distrust then evolves with the change of genre, so to speak. You don't necessarily want to trust too much this disembodied voice who's telling you can't do it, though you have to, or you're stuck there. But as you progress to more of the escaping, that disembodied voice is again trying to dissuade you from doing exactly what you're doing. And that's when the fear really comes through. And the visuals of the game really do lend themselves to this. Throughout the game, you begin in the Aperture Science with white, lots and lots of white, a clear and clean medical almost facility. But as you go on, it's not so much of a perhaps comfortable facility as you might imagine with any other medical building or science building, because you want everything to be clean, but it's moving into a sterility. Too clean. And much with soap, if you keep killing off all the bugs, you end up with a superbug, and that's kind of what Glados is as far as AI goes. And the commentary there moves from, it's not so much a science anymore, but for Glados, this is now a game. And the fear of technology progressing, as Gwen's mentioned, having AI that is not only a robot anymore, but becoming a person, and where is the line drawn for a robot versus a person? with AI.
We are now going to be talking about the game as a game and how Glados affected it. So, in class, we talked about what Jane McGonigal defined a game as, with a goal, rules, feedback, and voluntary participation, all of which these things are affected by Glados in the game.
So, with McGonigal's basic definition of a game, it's interesting to note that, again, Glados doesn't do anything except the entire game revolves around them. So you have them challenging each and every point of the definition, the goal, the rules, the feedback system, and that voluntary participation. To begin, the goal evolves as the game evolves because of Glados.
Yeah, at first, like, when you're playing the game, you're like, okay, my goal is to, like, pass this test. Like, you're going through it and you're like, yep, I got this, I can do this. And then she tries to kill you. And you're like, okay, so that wasn't my goal. My goal, I guess, is to defeat Glados because she's a psychotic robot who's killing things. So your goal changes throughout the game because of Gladys's deception.
And then the rules also go hand in hand, naturally, with the goal. So the rules of the game evolve as the game changes from the puzzle to the survival. You go from the creative thinking very quickly to find solutions as you move through, and yet as the game changes from the puzzle to the survival, you're no longer being challenged with preset challenges, like tests, so to speak. You're not going through a labyrinth anymore with a portal gun. You're escaping, well, I suppose, a larger labyrinth of the actual building itself, away from Glados.
The next thing that McGonigal talks about is feedback. So the feedback is really interesting in this game, I find, because what you want is for this encouragement of like, yep, you're doing good, you're getting through, you're close to your goal. But Glados often throws a wrench in it. There's a particular level in the game that she labels as extreme pessimism, and right at the beginning of the level, she's like, this is impossible. Sorry, you're not going to make it. You can't do this, which is completely the opposite of what you want to hear from the feedback. There's nothing encouraging about it. Parts of the second one, just like, right off the bat, she's like, you're a horrible human. You suck.
It says right here, you're a terrible person.
Yeah. She constantly challenges the feedback system and takes it away, but she also does it to see how you work through it, and at the end she's like, oh wow, you managed to work through extreme pessimism, good for you. But it's also like, at the time, you don't know that she's just testing you.
And the final piece is the voluntary participation. For a game to be a game, you must want to do it, because if you don't want to do it, then it makes it work, or possibly torture, or maybe both. So there's an interesting divide, because obviously as players outside of the game or the simulation, we are voluntarily doing this. But in the narrative of the game itself, the character we play is not necessarily voluntarily doing this. They may be, and that story isn't given to us. Now, the voluntary participation at the beginning is a little fuzzy, because we don't know if we've given consent to do this as the character and not the player. So instead of now going from puzzle to puzzle and challenging the puzzles and ourselves to overcome them, we are now challenged to voluntarily save ourselves. So the participation is from test to survival, and how does that react with a voluntary stance? There's a lot of participation that can get a little fuzzy, and it's very interesting to see how they interact, because they do a lot.
So that's really all we have to say. Glados is a huge part of this game. She runs the game, and it is a game for her. Or is it?
Exactly, and that's the big question we thought about Portal, is if Glados is sentient and an artificial intelligence, where is the line between that and a person? Where is the line between voluntary participation and the other rules of the game that Glados seems to bend like light near a black hole? It doesn't matter, because it completely revolves and utterly revolves around her. So then we have questions of, is this Glados playing a game? Is this for a sense of twisted fun? Is it possible even for robots to play games, because that requires voluntary participation? And can robots have voluntary anything? We really felt that the entire game of Portal revolves around Glados, and it kind of does. But also, Glados is a symbol for the game at large. It questions what is the difference between a person and a robot? And where do all these lines get drawn, or are they not drawn? Are they assumed boundaries? Or are they just simply that, assumptions?
The portal will open in 3, 2, 1.
Hi there, so thank you for watching our video on Glados in the game Portal. We're just going to give a few shoutouts and recognition to our sources that we used. So our first one would be Google Images for the images and pictures supplied in this video. We would also like to thank
YouTube for some of the gameplay and walkthroughs that we used in the background.
Specifically from YouTube was a clip from The Office that we would like to acknowledge. We would also like to thank
The creators of the game Portal for making it.
And the author of RUR for the ideas that we related back to the game.
And a final shout out to a very willing little kitten who ran through our pseudo portals. Thank you, Smeagol.
Thank you for watching. Have a great day.